Welcome. This is Damon Brown. You're watching the Bring Your Worst Show. Come to you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at almost at 11:30. I've had the same show time for a long time. It's part of the new season. My new time is 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. Thank you for coming through. My main thing is helping you as a side hustler, solopreneur, or otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. Let me go and connect with y'all on Amazon. It usually takes a minute, and then we go ahead and get it popping. But I'm so excited to connect with y'all. We actually have an exciting show today. It should be a lot of fun, and I think based on that, we'll be able to make it a good week. Yeah. My new book is Career Remix. Get the gig you want based on the skills you've got. Much love to all of y'all. Thank you so much for all the love and support. There's also an audiobook available to it. So if you want to go and check that out, that's cool too. It looks like we're having some issues with the Amazon Live. So my apologies to the Amazon Live folks. I'll go ahead and try to post it on there after the fact or wait till Amazon gets its stuff together. So we'll go ahead and keep it moving. If you like this show and you want to become part of this movement to become a side hustler, become a solopreneur, to build something greater than you, or as my talk about my previous book, build something from now as we kind of work our way through the pandemic, as we kind of figure out what our next move is going to be. Who's going to create the next epoch, the next era. Hopefully, it's us that have a unique voice. Those of us that haven't been able to participate as much, and those of us that have not had the resources to traditionally make it a more fair world. I'm part of that movement. Why don't you join me? Subscribe right there. It is free. As I talked about in the last few shows, the amount of y'all that have come through has been incredible. We've got tens of thousands of people that are coming through to the show. Thank you. I'm after having the show up for 2.5 years, and being at around 310 episodes or so. I appreciate the love, and thank you for riding with me. So, you got me all misty eyed over here. I so appreciate the love. You know. So today, for our live show, we have a live show. If we have a live show, it's going to be on Wednesday. It's not every Wednesday, but most Wednesdays. Today's live show Q&A featuring y'all. Travel without leaving home. If you're familiar with the show at all, or my background is journalism, so if you've read some of my work, or if you've read any of my books, including Built From Now right behind me, Career Remix, or the previous books over the last dozen plus years, then you know how much I love travel. I love travel, number one, because it gets us out of our heads and out of our bubble. Number two, it reminds us that the world does not revolve around us. My particular view as a middle-aged African American from South Jersey who's lived across America but has never lived outside of America, my viewpoint is so myopic compared to folks I met in Japan, folks that my wife and I met in Morocco, folks that I've connected with in Spain. There's so many different viewpoints, so many different worlds, and I mean that in a metaphoric sense. There's so many different worlds that we can connect to, and so much love that's out there that we don't always get, we don't always understand. Travel allows us to do this. However, the big caveat, being a traveler since I have two little kids, 7 and 9, and being a traveler since I was, their age, suddenly we can't do that as much. And that was like, a few years ago where it's like you can't leave the house, and you can't leave the state. There's certain countries to this day that you can't enter. It really it was heavy. I understood and I respect it. My wife's a pediatrician. I understand science. So no grudge there. It's more like, how do I connect with other people? Which would be the third thing with travel. How do you connect with other people if we're at home? It's not a coincidence that I started this show in December 21st or 22nd, whatever the winter equinox was, or winter solstice. I started it on that day in 2020. If you go back through the archives, again, you subscribe to the show for free. The first episode was that day. There's a reason for that. It's because what I would usually do at like the TED conference, when I'd be keynoting on the road, when I'd just be connecting with y'all as a coach and otherwise, suddenly that was unplugged. But it also kind of hurt my soul a little bit, because even just the pleasure of traveling, exposing my kids and my family to new things, having uncomfortable experiences is so, I think, integral to us growing as people. So I had an episode about 2 years ago. And in fact, I will click it right here. One of my more popular episodes at the time, how to travel the world without leaving home. And I actually watched the episode again, and I was like 2 years younger. A lot's happened in 2 years, and it was funny to go and watch this episode. But y'all consider it a classic. Again, it had a lot of views for that period of time. Be sure and check that out. I would consider it a classic at this point, or at least y'all have deemed it as such. This is kind of an update on that: how to travel the world without leaving home. So I want to give you some practical ways to nurture your spirit, to continue to use culture and connect with other people. There's so many things that we can talk about as far as how to connect with others, how to expand your palette and your ideas of what culture is while actually being at home. And we'll get into the reasons why you might still be at home. And then we'll also get into the ways that you can actually build up things so that when you do hopefully get a chance to travel again outside of the home or outside of the country, then you'll be ready for that. So one of the questions that I often get, because I've traveled a lot, knock on wood, that's me work knocking on my wood desk, is that I've been able to travel even when I didn't have much money. And my traveling got really serious around the time I first became a freelance writer many, many years ago. And I took myself to Japan for my birthday. And that was my first time really outside of the country. I went to Canada a couple of times because I grew up from my childhood in Michigan. So Canada is right there. Shout out to me. But really being out of the country, that was my first time, and pay for it myself, put myself up in lodging, stumbled around, speaking some really bad Japanese, probably better than I speak now. And that happened when I didn't have much money. And so that's one of the questions that comes up a lot is like, how do you do it? Where does that work? And that gets into one of the biggest challenges that we have. If you actually are comfortable and are able to travel right now, then it's like that ultimate question. Let me take this off. Why wouldn't you travel? There's a few reasons. The first reason is you got people that you got to take care of. I'm the primary caregiver, or at least have been over the past several years. My wife started working from home, so it's a little bit more equitable in that sense. But for most of our kids' life, I've been the primary caregiver. And so me traveling, even when I had all the books that came out, including the aforementioned Build From Now and my previous bestseller, The Bite-Sized Entrepreneur, it wasn't like I was on the road all the time. Like they were literally in diapers, or they're about to come out of my wife's womb. So I couldn't be on the road. You might be in a similar experience. I know that for a lot of us, our parents or our older relatives are getting older, and so they might need us in a certain way. You might have certain physical or mental or even emotional challenges that don't make it good for you to travel right now. Then, of course, there's, the pandemic, which, believe it or not, is still happening. And so we have these certain challenges as far as folks that are immunocompromised. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, which I can count a couple of my friends in that camp. Folks who want to be safe and want to wait until more people are vaccinated. Whatever your stance is on that, we all have our particular reasons for not traveling. And I respect all of our reasons for not traveling at this period of time. Then the last reason, which I was just talking about, which is why I brought up Tokyo, is that you might just be broke. And it's like, I got other stuff to do. Even when you have certain resources coming in, and my wife and I are lucky where we have resources, there might be other things that are a priority, such as getting the house together, saving up for your kids' college, paying down debt, whatever that case is. Zero judgment. The thing is that, at least for me personally, I never looked at travel as a luxury. I looked at it as a necessity. And so instead of saying, I can't travel because X, Y, and Z, I looked at it as, I'm going to find a way to travel based on these resources. Now, the scientific / safety part of it, I'm 100% down with that. Again, my wife's a pediatrician. I've written a lot of science articles. I know how science works. So we've been pretty chill. It wasn't until recently where it's like, okay, maybe we can step on a plane now. Maybe we can go ahead and travel a little bit, which is one of the reasons why I was spurring this on. Don't be hard on yourself, and don't allow other people to judge you if you're not comfortable traveling right now. Do whatever works well for you. This program is actually for you because I want to help you find ways to create something and to be travel minded, even if you might not be on the road for a little while. And there's a few ways to do that. One good example, or one way to do that, would be books. And this is actually one of my favorite books, A Cook's Tour by Anthony Bourdain. Rest in peace to Anthony Bourdain. He died about my gosh, I think it was before the pandemic. So about 3 years ago. Rest in peace to him. He's definitely one of my food heroes and travel heroes. As you can tell from like the previous the previous episode that I talked about a couple years ago, food and travel to me are the same, and you can learn so much about a culture by their food. And as I mentioned again 2 years ago, my family, all sides of my family, my wife's family, I have a step family, so all three sides of that family, we're all very food forward. You know, a lot of Southern folks in there, a lot of Indian folks in there, like, and all these are very, very Southern as far as African American. And so we have a lot of food is the way that we connect. He outlines it perfectly here. I remember and I was trying to find it, but it was a very long time ago where I was about to move to New Orleans, and me and my girlfriend, who is now my wife, we went down there for me to check it out because that was me living there on my own because she actually had to do stuff for medical school, so she was on a different path. And so I was moving down there, and the only thing I basically had, because I was pretty broke at the time, again, you'll see a pattern here, was me reading A Cook's Tour while I was in New Orleans. And that dog-eared paperback really took me there. Now, Cook's Tour, to take it back very briefly, Anthony Bourdain was a chef at Les Halles, which was a place that shut down recently. I wouldn't say over the last 2-3 years. It was not open last time I was in New York, and I was in New York about 4 years ago, so it shut down a few years ago. But a very popular French-based cuisine. He got the opportunity to do an article for The New Yorker, the legendary magazine, literary magazine, about all the secrets to the restaurant business. If you've heard, don't buy seafood or eat seafood on a Monday, because they're not called fishermen, but there's another term for it. The people that get the produce from the sea, like the shrimp, the grouper, whatever your catfish, whatever your vibe is, they actually don't do deliveries over the weekend. And so if you're eating seafood on a Monday, it probably came in on Saturday. That rule, if you've heard about that, if you're into food, you probably heard about that. That came from him. Like, that came from that one New Yorker article. That got him on the fast track to something closer to my stuff, where he's a professional, and they're like, well, you need to do more. So it's like that. Similar to my path of me being a writer, and then I started doing startups. My second startup got really popular. I ended up selling the company, and suddenly I started being asked to coach people on that process, which leads me to you. Sometimes your career stuff takes different turns based on certain successes or notoriety, or literally someone pulling you aside and saying, we need you for this. We need you for this. So if you can do this, this would serve the world way better than this other thing, right? And I think that's one of the things of being receptive to that. That started him on A Cook's Tour. And I want to say it was with the Discovery Channel, not unfortunately with Food Network, if I remember correctly. It was actually with Discovery Channel. And he had him going around the world eating different foods because he's willing to travel. This is a companion to the TV series, but you don't need to watch the TV series. You just read the book. It is fantastic. There's a ton of other books I was going through last night as far as what I want to bring up. Some of the books on this shelf are about travel, like 3 or 4 of them. There's so many I could mention, but I wanted to start with this one and actually land with this one. This is a great place to start if you're looking for some of that motivation. And remember, this is a Q&A, so go ahead and hop in. Sorry, all my tabs are mixed up, so forgive me for looking lost for a second. Live Q&A as far as traveling without leaving home. If you happen to miss this show, or if you want to watch the earlier episodes, you can catch the Bring Your Worst show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. And you can subscribe for free. As far as I can tell, it's always going to be free. We've been rocking for 2.5 years. Nothing's changed, which is a good thing. Now, there's certain things that you can do to ease your challenge or ease your pain as you're kind of sitting at home waiting for certain things to pass over. There's actually one. What up, journalism? We're going from journalism to education. Oh, that's actually a really good question. We're gonna go and take a sidebar for that. Thanks for the question, Camilo. I think that's a natural progression because if you think about it, I'm a journalist, and I know your background is journalism. And I think one of the things that makes sense, similar to the Anthony Bourdain discussion, is that as journalists, we're used to asking questions in a certain way so that it gets the recipient to think. And we tend to ask open-ended questions, which is very similar, at least to my experience, to a really good college or high school professor, particularly as you go up to the upper education or higher education. I think that's more important to have those open-ended questions. I got two little kids, so I mean, I always ask them open-ended questions, which sometimes drives them nuts. But as you get older, the power in having those open-ended questions, I think there's a lot of strength in that. And so getting insight from that, I think really helps. So I think in myself going from being a newspaper and magazine journalist and then a few steps in between, including being an author and an entrepreneur, me being a coach right now actually makes a lot of sense just because it ends up representing that toolbox that I always talk about, toolboxes, that toolbox, Camillo, that we have gained as journalists, right? So hopefully that makes sense. So I think it's a natural progression. At least it has been for me. A lot of my favorite educators are former something else. A really quick sidebar. When I went to Northwestern, I got my master's in magazine publishing there. And I remember being concerned because everyone else was studying journalism. And I was studying video games, and I've developed video games in the past, and I'm looking at technology. Wired magazine was the hottest thing at the time, so I'm trying to get to Wired magazine, all this other stuff. And I remember talking to one of my advisors about it, and being like, "Look, like I'm all over the place. I got like 5, 6 things that I'm focused on, and everyone else just seems to be concerned about writing." And they were like, "Damon, I want to tell you a secret. If you're only concerned about writing, then the only thing you're going to be doing is talking about writing. But because you have these different interests and your background is pretty varied and all these other things, because I knew how to program when I was a kid and stuff like that, there are certain things that wasn't part of the typical journalist at DNA. He's like, you'll actually have something to write about." And so I guess that's how I would end the question is you going into education from journalism, that specialty, that focus actually gives you insight when you do become an educator. Just like my experiences as a public speaker, my experiences launching video games, my experiences as an entrepreneur, and all those other things, they're all mixed up, but then they come out when I coach. They come out in this TV show. And if I didn't have any experiences, I wouldn't have shit to talk about, right? As many people have said, it's like if you don't live, what are you going to talk about? So that's my very long answer. Hopefully that nails the question. Thank you so much. And so if you're going to be at home and you want to get a little bit of culture, I highly recommend. There we go. Sorry, my internet's a little bit slow today. I highly recommend Google Arts and Culture. What it did, and I heard about this at TED a few years ago, and I forgot about it. And then a recent Cub Scout meeting, shout out to the Cub Scouts, they're doing good work. A recent meeting, they had brought it up, and I was like, oh, I forgot about this. Google basically took and digitized everything. Like, if you want to go and walk through the Louvre, you got it. You just go to there. It's free, literally free, as a lot of things with Google. And so it's free, rock with it. It was fantastic when I was able to take my kids through there. My wife and I have been to Louvre many, many years ago when we were in Paris. But to be able to take my kids there during the pandemic and be able to say, hey, this, that, and the third, this is Mona Lisa, this is that painting and all that, and be able to have that virtual experience with them was a great second place to that. Now, I love Paris. You're not going to be able to virtually eat Parisian food, right? And I love Parisian food. Can't do that. But you can stay safe, be at home, Get yourself some culture or pass it on to your kids. Level up, just have a good time. I highly recommend this website. It was a lot of fun getting back on. I was just on there a couple of weeks ago, which is probably one of the reasons why I was thinking about traveling anyway and be able to do that, you know? And so let's shift a little bit because I think it's also important to be realistic and be like, like some of us are going to be in situations where we aren't going to travel again or not going to travel anytime soon. There are also a group of us, which I'll be part of that, where we're going to travel, just not extensively and or not right now. So if you know and are fortunate enough to know that you're going to be traveling soon, build from now. Sorry for the pun based on my previous book, but build from now. The traveling that I've been able to do recently, and I had a keynote about a year ago over in Benton Harbor at Lake Michigan College. Shout out to y'all. Um, and was able to do it safely. We took precautions and all those things. But a lot of things that went into that, whether it's the hotel or the flight, those other things, were based on strategies that I built while I wasn't traveling. In other words, if it's loyalty points, if it's getting your passport together, all those little details, you don't need to be traveling for that. And in fact, I would implore you, these are big words now, I would implore you to start to get that together now. One example of this is a loyalty card that I rock with. It's I always forget the name of it, but I use it all the time. The Marriott Bonvoy business card. It actually works well for my business. And obviously it's connected towards Marriott. Here's the deal. If you end up getting a Marriott hotel, then I think you end up getting 6 times the points for that particular thing. And so those points, of course, can be used to do hotel reservations and things of that nature. Half of the hotels that I use for my business, that when my family's traveling and all that, about half of them have been free. And or I've gotten upgrades on it based on that. There's actually a referral, so you're getting a special discount based on me co-signing it, being like, not literally co-signing your thing, but co-signing and being like, look, here are folks that are actually going to be traveling in the future. What's cool about this is that you can build up those points based on everyday purchases, like whatever your purchases are, particularly when it comes to your business. I have certain things that I rock with my business, like my website is through strikingly.com. If you look through the previous episodes, you'll go ahead and see the links for that. Me talking about that, particularly the episode about doing your business remotely. I talk about Strikingly quite a bit. There's all kinds of Dropbox, which I use. Shout out to Drew. All these different things that I use to back up my technology. StreamYard, shout out to StreamYard, who I'm using right now. The links are below. All these things, or most of these things, I'm actually putting on my card and then paying them off. And then the great part about it is that I'm getting points for it, which will allow me to, like, I took my family to TED last year. They weren't able to come into the event because there's no kids at the event, but they're able to come to Vancouver. And those hotels were that hotel, if I remember correctly, was based on my points. So we were able to travel basically for free. I'd highly recommend it. Build up those things so that, again, you don't have to hustle as hard when your particular part of the world opens up. You might be waiting on certain things. You might be waiting on a certain safety level. You might be waiting for a certain country to open up. But while you're waiting, get your shit together, right? And that's kind of my argument right there, right? Another thing I would recommend, excuse me, would be a dual thing, depending on your comfort level. One is called Clear. And I heard about this from Joan Price. Shout out to you. Wonderful, wonderful sex educator and author, focus on the senior set. So her focus is 65 and up. And as far as pleasure and intimacy and connecting with other people, which is fantastic. If you know my work, you can tell why Joan and I are good friends. But I heard about Clear from her many, many years ago. She's traveled more than I have. Again, shout out to her. But Clear essentially allows you to pre-qualify, for lack of a better term, your information so that it's equivalent of going through TSA check, right? So I can't remember, or I don't know how many airports have Clear at this point. I know they have it here in Vegas, but we're a pretty big city. Um, but they have it in, I know they have it in all the major cities from LA to all the New York airports, whatever, whatever. This is really good because it allows you to get through quickly. Now, if you have your concerns, as I do, as far as with getting sick, whether it's COVID, which would be the paramount thing, but I mean, just basic things, just like going through the airport and just whatever, whatever. This allows you to spend less time in the airport and more time getting on the plane and getting where you need to go. Highly recommend it. I think there is, no pun intended, a clearance time to it. So that's why I'm recommending, if you plan on traveling in the near future, check out Clear, see what's going on with that. If you're comfortable, if you're based in the United States and you're comfortable with the government having information as far as your passport, which they have, but a little bit more details than that, go with Global Entry. Global Entry, I know, is $100, and it takes, and you have it for 5 years. I have a family member that just did Global Entry. It literally took them 15 minutes. And it happened to be at one of the spots that has Global Entry, where you can sign up for it. They take your fingerprints, ask you a few questions, and that's it. I got Global Entry way back, I want to say 6-7 years ago. Obviously, mine expired because it expired during the pandemic. So I wasn't trying to, or the beginning of the pandemic, I wasn't trying to rock with that. When I got mine done, it took like an hour and a half, right? I was waiting for them to ask for a stool sample. Now it's a lot easier, right? Again, my family member just did it like 2-3 weeks ago at the airport. They were done. They were done so fast, I was confused. And I was like, you're done? Like, it took me like 2 hours, right? So again, if you're comfortable with the government and having that information, it wasn't an extensive amount of information, but I can respect if you're not rocking with the American government, then don't do that. But this is $100 a year. I think Clear varies on the program that you have. So I'm sorry, I don't actually have the information. And if you're watching this in the future, the information is probably going to be different anyway. Just go to Clear. If if you're outside of the country, I think Clear actually might work. I believe it works in Canada and Mexico, if I remember correctly. Global Entry, as it implies, you're all over the place. I spoke in Bogota 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago, and Global Entry saved my behind. Quick story. I was flying back from Bogota. I just spoke. Shout out to Colombia and Bogota. I know they're going through a lot of stuff right now. So blessings to all the people I know down there. They took care of me. I was flying back. It was right before my birthday. And at that time, my kids were a lot younger. So they were like 2 and 4 or something like that. And it's like, is daddy going to be home for his birthday? Da, da, da. And I'm like, no, my flight's good. I should be able to land late the night before my birthday. I fly from Bogota to Texas. I want to say Houston, right? Because I think it was American Airlines. So I go to Houston, which I rock with Delta now, just to throw it out there. I'll be giving some Delta tips later on this year for sure. But anyway, I was with them, with American at the time. I flew into Houston. Shout out to Houston. I know some of y'all are watching. And flew into Houston. And it's a immigration/customs line because it's Houston. The line was literally hundreds of people. As I told someone recently, I'm really bad at judging the number of people based on a quick look, but I know it was in the hundreds. And I was like, and my flight was like in 45 minutes, I think. So it was a layover. I was like, I'm not going to. I got to text my kids. At least I'm back in America. I can text them. I text my kids, tell them that daddy's not going to be home for his birthday. And I'm disappointed, of course. And then I remember I have Global Entry. I just did it the year before, something like that. And I started looking around and I find in a freaking tumbleweeds a sign for Global Entry. And I walk over there, literally no one was over there. And long space. I walk through the long space. I get there, there's like 2 people ahead of me. And I show them my Global Entry. I show them my passport. And they're like, okay, you're clear to go. And I just walk through and casually get on my plane. Done. It can save your hide. Again, if you're not cool with Global Entry, then, rock with Clear. I don't know how international Clear is, though. So keep that in mind. Excuse me. And of course, the big question that I keep forgetting to answer. What is your best travel tip? And that's something that people ask a lot. Folks know I travel a lot. My biggest travel tip is to actually make space for whatever you're going to do and then some. So if you're planning things for like 2 days in Italy, try to buffer in for 3 or make plans for a day and a half and then leave that half a day. What I love in traveling, excuse me, this fits my personality, but I've also found it when I travel with folks who are a little bit more structured, is that there's always happy accidents. Shout out to Bob Ross, rest in peace. But there's always happy accidents. So there's that restaurant that you wander around, you get lost, and you're like, I'll stop in here for a quick coffee. I'm a coffee drinker, quick coffee or a drink or whatever, whatever. And then suddenly you end up getting into a conversation, or suddenly the drinks get really comfortable, or suddenly you have a good conversation with the people that you're with and you don't want to leave. One of the worst feelings in the world is that longing when you have to leave someplace before you feel like it's time. At least for me. I can't speak for y'all. But as a traveler, it feels like it sucks. It's like, can we just have a few more moments? So cushioning things for a few more moments. I sometimes drive my family crazy because I'm about getting to the airport a little bit early. Because I've missed one plane in my life when I was traveling solo, and another plane I missed when I was traveling with a family member. That's it. That to me also, worst feeling in the world, that would actually be the worst feeling in the world above having to rush. And so I just cushion in that time. I do the same thing with my coaching practice. I do the same thing with my work. I do the same thing with this show. Find ways to add a little bit of a buffer to either end. Get there a little bit early, get some flexibility there so that you can actually relax and be fully present when you do travel. Again, we're talking about physical travel here, not the virtual stuff. The virtual one, you can go to Google Arts and Culture at any time. You don't need to buffer that. You can go to it in the middle of the night if you want. That's cool. I've done that before. Not a problem. But physically traveling, my best tip is to actually give space for the experience. If that requires sacrificing a couple other things or getting up a little early, at least for me, it makes perfect sense to do so. Right? I think there's some challenges to that. The last one, let me grab the link real quick. There it is. I was forgetting a link. My last recommendation, if I can speak today. My last recommendation should pop up in a second. I will talk while it pops up. Oh, looks like we're having some connection issues. That would explain some of the challenges today. I thought it was me, but it's like, no, looks like some internet connection issues. There it is. Forgive me. Looks like it's going to storm today. I'm sure that's not helping the internet connection. So again, thank you for your patience. Oh, and then, now everything's popping up. Rosetta Stone, literally the Rosetta Stone of modern technology, language learning. I rocked with Rosetta Stone ages ago. I know little pieces of a lot of different languages. I don't claim any language, but I know a little bit of Hindi, a little bit of Japanese, a little bit of Spanish, a little bit of Italian, mostly from traveling. Tiny bit of French, tiny, just a few words to get around, right? And the important words, I'll leave it at that. Rosetta Stone has been great for that back in the day when I was learning Spanish, and even when I was dabbling in Hindi, so I can connect more with the Hindi side of the family. This was a big part of that. Rosetta Stone has updated greatly, though, in the past. I think I started rocking with Rosetta Stone 25 years ago. So it's been around for a while. This is new and improved. I did some research on it this week. It's different. This is available through Amazon. They have a good deal. It's a deal that's happening right now, like literally right now. I'm not trying to sell you on it, just trying to let you know. If you're going to rock with it, right now is the time. I looked it up and they're like, hey, limited deal. This is what's happening. I want to say there's 25 languages in there. It was a mess load of languages. And someone who, I know people, including my wife, who are excellent at absorbing languages and really getting good at them. I'm not one of those people, unless the latter half of my life, suddenly I get good at that, which I'm open to. Maybe I just need to keep practicing. But not only people like my wife, but also people like me who dabble in different languages and pick up little words, little sayings, things of that nature, this sounds perfect, right? Because like I was in Italy a handful of years ago. I went to Morocco for my honeymoon. I've been to Spain a couple times. Like there's little bits and pieces of languages, as well as the aforementioned time in Japan a couple of times. And so if you're someone like that who likes pieces of languages, this might be a good place to do it. And again, you don't even have to rock with this. The Duolingo, the Babbel, all these. I just picked one, but there's so many different options right now. If you're at home and on some level you're going to interact with someone from another country, interact with someone using a different language, or eventually going to get on a plane again, or a train, or automobile, whatever, and go to a foreign place, then this is the perfect time. And you're not traveling right now. This is a perfect time to learn. And the little bit that I've been able to travel, I've been thankful that I've built up the Marriott and Delta points, as I was implying earlier, that I understood some of the language stuff that I would need eventually in the future that I'm still working on, that I had my passport together and all those different things. In other words, while you're at home, please enjoy the Google Arts and Culture. Enjoy the Anthony Bourdain, which I'll throw the link up here. All the links are down below, by the way. Enjoy all those different things. But if eventually you're going to be back on the road, get your Clear or get your Global Entry. I rock with Global Entry. Get your card. It doesn't have to be this Marriott card. I rock with Marriott. I can tell a long history about that, but there's reasons why I rock with them. So they treated me well. So I rock with Marriott. Whatever a hotel chain you think you're going to rock with, get that card if you can. Or if you're rocking with a certain airline, in my case it's Delta, get that card as well and start racking up those points so that when you are able to travel, willing and or able to travel, then it will be a lot more cost effective for you. And start learning those languages. So even if you connect with people virtually, and there's other opportunities, I actually will do that in a future episode, as far as ways to connect with other people without leaving your house. I've used them. They've been fantastic. I've made friends, colleagues, even business associates. So much stuff has come from those things. Some of them don't speak English, or English is a second language. Rock with a Rosetta Stone. You do not have to wait until you get all clear to get back on the road. Now, if you miss this Q&A, or if you want to see the past Q&As, there are 65, 63. There's a lot of Q&As. The show's been on for more than 2 years. It's been almost every Wednesday. If you do the math, that's about 60 something. So if you want to catch the previous Q&As, be sure and do so. Thank you so much for love and support. And subscribe to the Damon Brown's Bring Your Worst show. Right there, it is free. And we are every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. That's the playlist. I think it's 310 episodes. I ended up changing the number of episodes actually changed because there was a couple episodes I had to republish and so forth. So I think we're at 310 right now. Not bad. And thank you again for all the recent love and support. And the newest book, again, is Career Remix. Get the gig you want based on the skills you got. All right, that's my time. I got little kids to take care of, so much love to y'all. Remember that you can always bring your worth, and you can always build from now. Take care.